Chapter 1. The girl, behind the glass black hollow, remembered everything. The village sat deep between mountains that rose like dark walls against the sky, trapping fog secrets and old grudges inside the valley. Looked. People born there rarely left. Those who did were spoken about in whispers for years afterward, as if escape itself were betrayal. Every road in Black Hollow eventually led to the same place, Hawthorne Manor. Looked. The estate overlooked the village from the northern hill like a silent king watching servants below. Its stone walls were blackened by age, its windows tall and narrow like the eyes of a suspicious giant. Looked. Ivy crawled across the outer walls no matter how often gardeners cut it away. To outsiders, the manor looked beautiful. To Elena Hawthorne, it looked like a cage. At 17. Looked. Elena had already learned the difference between admiration and freedom. The villagers admired her beauty, admired her expensive dresses, admired her family name. Looked. But admiration could become another form of prison when people only loved the idea of you. She sat beside the library window, watching rain slide down the glass in crooked trails. Below the hill, lanterns glowed throughout the village streets. Looked. Tiny moving lights. Tiny moving lives. Free lives. Elena rested her forehead against the cold window pane. "What are they doing down there?" she whispered softly to herself. She imagined people laughing inside warm homes. Looked. Families eating dinner together. Young couples walking through the marketplace without servants following behind them. Normal things. Things she envied more than diamonds. The library door opened quietly. Looked. Thomas Hawthorne stepped inside, carrying 2 steaming cups of tea. He paused near the doorway and smiled gently at his daughter. "You're hiding again." Elena turned slightly. "I'm thinking. That usually means hiding." Looked. He crossed the room and handed her a cup. Thomas Hawthorne was one of the few people in Black Hollow who still carried kindness in his face. Time had added silver to his dark hair and exhaustion beneath his eyes. Looked. But it had not hardened him the way it hardened most wealthy men in the valley. Elena accepted the tea with both hands. "Thank you." Thomas sat in the chair across from her. "Storm coming," he said. "There's always a storm coming here." Looked. Thomas chuckled quietly. That may be the most accurate thing anyone has ever said about Black Hollow. For a while they sat in comfortable silence. Elena preferred silence with her father because it never felt empty. Looked. He understood the strange sadness that followed her around the manor. Sometimes she believed he understood it because he carried the same sadness himself. "You skipped piano practice again," Thomas said finally. Elena groaned. Looked. "Please don't start. I'm not starting anything. I'm only informing you that your mother spent 20 minutes terrorizing the piano instructor. That poor woman?" Thomas laughed. "She may resign. I would if I were her." Looked. Another silence settled. Then Thomas studied his daughter more carefully. "You've been happier lately." Elena looked down at her tea immediately. "Have I?" "Yes." His voice softened. "I haven't seen you smile this much in years." Looked. Heat crept into Elena's cheeks. She hated how obvious she became whenever Daniel entered her thoughts. Thomas leaned back slowly. "There's someone, isn't there?" Elena nearly dropped the cup. "What?" Thomas grinned. Looked. "You used to stare out that window like the world had already ended. Now you look like you're waiting for it to begin." Elena opened her mouth to answer. The library doors suddenly swung open. Looked. Margaret Hawthorne entered like winter, stepping into the room. Every servant in the manor feared Margaret. Every villager respected her. She carried herself with such perfect control that even her footsteps sounded disciplined. Looked. Her dark dress flowed behind her as she crossed the library. "Elena." "Yes, Mother? You will attend the Founders' Banquet this Saturday." Elena's stomach tightened instantly. Margaret continued without pause. Looked. "The Calloway family will also be attending." Thomas sighed softly under his breath. Elena already understood where the conversation was headed. Their son recently returned from university in London. Margaret added, "I don't care." Looked. "You should." "I don't." Margaret's eyes sharpened. "Elena." Thomas intervened gently. "She's 17. She is almost 18," Margaret corrected coldly, "and she must begin understanding her responsibilities." Looked. Elena set her tea aside carefully before she spilled it from irritation. "What responsibilities?" Margaret looked at her as though the answer should have been obvious. "You are a Hawthorne. There it is." Thomas rubbed his forehead. Looked. "Elena." "No," Elena snapped quietly. I'm tired of hearing that like it explains everything. Margaret folded her arm. Our family spent generations building respect in this valley. Looked. And what does that have to do with me marrying someone I don't love? The room went still. Thomas looked down immediately. Margaret's face hardened. You speak like a child. No, Elena replied softly. I speak like a person. Looked. Margaret stepped closer. Love is not enough to build a life. Elena met her mother's stare directly. Maybe not, but neither is misery. The tension between them crackled harder than the thunder outside. Margaret spoke slowly. Looked. You will attend the banquet. I won't dance with the Calloway boy. You will if I instruct you to. Something inside Elena snapped. I'm not property. Margaret's expression darkened dangerously. You will not raise your voice to me. Looked. Thomas stood quickly. That's enough. Margaret ignored him completely. You are too young to understand what matters, and you're too afraid to understand what doesn't. The words landed like a slap. For the first time in years, looked. Margaret looked genuinely shocked. Elena rose from her chair. I'm tired. She left the library before either parent could stop her. Behind her she heard Margaret say something sharply to Thomas. Looked. But Elena continued down the hallway without listening. The manor suddenly felt suffocating. Portraits lined the walls like judges watching her pass. Dead Hawthornes, men who built fortunes, women who married strategically. Looked. Generations of people who sacrificed happiness for power. Elena wondered if any of them had ever truly lived. She hurried upstairs to her bedroom and locked the door behind her. Only then did she breathe properly again. Looked. Rain tapped softly against the balcony doors. Elena crossed the room and pushed them open. Cold air flooded inside. She stepped onto the balcony overlooking the gardens below. The storm clouds had darkened the entire valley. Looked. Wind bent the trees gently while lanterns flickered along the garden paths, and standing near the stone wall beneath the balcony was Daniel Reed. The moment she saw him, everything inside her softened. Daniel looked up and smiled. Looked. Not the polished smile wealthy boys practiced at banquets, a real smile, warm, uneven. Honest, Elena felt her heart stumble the way it always did around him. He raised one hand slightly. She smiled despite herself. Looked. Then she glanced back toward her bedroom door, still closed. She looked down again. Daniel mouthed silently, "Come down." Elena hesitated only a second before disappearing back inside. Looked. A few minutes later she slipped through the hidden servants' staircase behind the western wing and emerged into the rain-damp gardens. Daniel stepped forward immediately. You came. You're surprised? Your mother terrifies me. Looked. Elena laughed softly. She terrifies everyone. Daniel grinned. Good. That means I'm normal. Up close he smelled faintly of cedar wood and rain. His dark hair curled slightly from the damp wet. Looked, and tiny scratches marked his hands from work at the carpentry shop. Elena loved those hands. They looked like hands that built things instead of controlling them. You shouldn't be here, she whispered. Probably not. Looked. If someone sees you, I know. But neither of them moved away. The danger had become part of the attraction now. Every secret meeting felt stolen from fate itself. Daniel studied her face carefully. You've been crying. Looked. Elena looked away. My mother started planning my future again. Daniel's smile faded. The Calloway family, you heard already? The whole village hears everything. Elena sighed. She wants me to marry someone important. Looked. Daniel looked down briefly. Well, I'm definitely failing that requirement. You're important to me. The sincerity in her voice stunned him silent for a moment. Then he reached for her hand carefully. Even after months together, looked. Touching her still felt dangerous, not because of Elena, because of the world around them. Come with me, he whispered. Where? You'll see. Looked. They slipped through the outer gardens and followed the narrow trail leading away from Hawthorne Manor toward the woods. Rain dripped from tree branches overhead while mud clung to their boots. Elena didn't care. Looked. For the first time all day she could breathe. The deeper they walked into the woods, the quieter the world became. No servants, no portraits, no expectations. Only Daniel beside her. Looked. After several minutes, the trees finally opened toward the lake. Elena stopped immediately. The water stressed the valley like black glass beneath the storm clouds. Moonlight occasionally broke through gaps in the clouds. Looked, painting silver across the surface. An enormous oak tree stood near the shoreline. Their tree. Daniel turned toward her. I fixed it. Elena blinked. What? He pointed toward the old wooden bench beneath the oak branches. Looked. Weeks earlier part of it had collapsed during heavy rain. Now it looked stronger than before. Elena smiled slowly. You repaired our bench. Our bench? Daniel teased. She rolled her eyes. You know what I mean. Daniel sat first. Looked. Pulling her gently beside him. For a while neither spoke. The lake moved quietly beside them. Far away thunder rumbled through the mountains. Then Daniel finally said, I've been saving money. Elena frowned slightly. For what? Looked. He hesitated, then reached into his jacket and removed folded papers, train schedules, maps, job advertisements. Elena stared at them silently. Daniel swallowed hard. There's work near the coast. Her pulse quickened. Looked. What are you talking about? I'm talking about leaving Black Hollow. The words felt impossible. Elena looked back toward the distant village lights. You can't just leave. Why not? Because people here don't. Looked. Daniel shrugged lightly. Then maybe that's the problem. Elena laughed nervously. You're serious. Yes. He leaned closer. I could build houses anywhere. You could do anything you wanted. Her throat tightened. Looked. Nobody had ever asked what she wanted before, only Daniel. Always Daniel. You really think we could survive out there? I think we'd finally live. The simplicity of his answer nearly broke her heart. Looked. Rain began falling harder around them. Daniel brushed wet hair away from her face gently. Elena, she looked at him, I love you. The words settled into her chest with terrifying weight, not because she doubted them. Looked, because she believed them completely. I know, she whispered. No. His voice shook slightly. I need you to understand something. She stared into his eyes. I would choose you over everything. Looked. Elena kissed him before he could say another word, not carefully, not cautiously, completely. Daniel pulled her closer beneath the rain, while thunder rolled above the mountains, and hidden deep among the trees beyond the lake. Looked. Another figure watched them silently. Elias Vane stood motionless in the darkness. The literature teacher's pale face remained expressionless as he watched Daniel touch Elena, watched her smile, watched her kiss him. Looked. Something ugly twisted inside his chest, because in Elias's mind, Elena Hawthorne already belonged to him, and Daniel Reed had stolen her. Wind moved through the trees. Rain soaked Elias's coat completely. Looked. Still he remained there watching them, watching hatred begin to bloom. End of chapter 1.